So this is the infamous Gibson studio, and this is where you've built. Well, this is in Houston, but this is where you would have built maybe millions of dollars of ad campaigns. Is that right?
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, jack it up there. Millions.
Wait, what do you mean? You're don't be shy.
Oh, I'm not shy, believe me.
I mean, you're the guy that owns the copyright on the phrase "life's a bitch" and then you die. I know that you told me that when I was 17, but also you did the hold the pickles and the onions on the Burger King song. You
All the
did.
pickles, all the lettuce. Special orders don't upset us. Let's hope that you don't. Hope that you'll let us have it your way. Right.
See, like that, and you didn't even have Chat GPT or Claude back then.
Didn't have what?
I mean, you're probably a little too old, but you're not. There's this thing called AI.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I do HI,
HI. What's HI? Hi.
human intelligence.
Oh, human intelligence. See, that's the genius about you. You will actually create a brand, a clothing brand or something that said it's called HI, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
I
I've,
mean,
I've
there's a
got
big.
I've got a good uh, clothing brand for you. It's called inactive wear. And it's just real loose fitting stuff when you don't want to do anything. You just want to lay around as opposed to all this active wear stuff. I've got inactive wear.
I mean, so you basically eat chips and watch horse racing when you're wearing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just lounge around. It's inactive wear. Just do nothing.
So this isn't for monks and for yogis, but it's just for everyday boomers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm cool with it. I mean, you've given me some ideas for some of my old little startups. I always turn to you for stuff. And I do want to say one other thing. You were the first person to drive a motorcycle around the world to a marketing campaign for Toyota, right?
It's for boy, you bring it. You're going way back on me. No, it wasn't Toyota. It was to me the motorcycle brand. I can't even think of it. It was a motorcycle. I can't think of the name of it. Yeah, we drove it around the world. How
So
do you
you can
remember
remember who
that?
won.
That's
So you,
like 60 years ago or something. I did that, or 50 years ago.
so
It's
that would
really
make
a
you
long
like
time.
what? That would make you 63 years old then?
Yeah, no, that would make me. I was in when I did that. I was in my 20s, so that's a long time ago.
Yeah,
I
I'm
can't
trying to
even
think
think of
who
the
the.
name of the motorcycle. That's pretty embarrassing.
No, that's all right. Well, I mean, you can probably still remember who won the Derby the first year you went, right?
I can only remember having a derby party the year that Ferdinand won out of the one hole. By the way,
So that means you're gonna like Renegade. Great.
no, I'm not gonna like Renegade. I probably won't like
Yeah,
anybody.
I know it's not really your. Well, it's actually kind of your race. I remember you hit the um again, my mind is weird. I remember snippets of things. I remember you hitting Sarava in the Belmont at a big price, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I've had some big prices in the Belmont over the years. Doesn't mean I can remember them all, but I had some big ones in the Belmont. The Derby, I came close a couple of times with big prices, but I'm kind of a 9-2 Derby guy. You know, kind of an always dreaming 9-2. I really loved. I can't think of his name. He led all the way and lost. I loved him, and he was only 9-2 or something. I like California Chrome, but I couldn't bet him at 5-2. So Derby's the Derby has a big luck quotient, you know, because of the 20 horses, and
yes.
I don't like big luck quotients. I want a smaller one, not a bigger one. And so the Derby's fun, but it's not my. I'm not going to get rich on the Derby probably ever.
Yeah, I closing argument. That was the horse, right?
Yeah, and Invisible Ink. I think I bet both of those.
Invisible Ink. Invisible Ink. Yes, and
Yeah,
that was
he was like 50-1. Had the lead, and then Monarchos went by him like he was standing still. So,
that that
but
made
but it
that
paid a
actually made my
lot.
pick.
I gave that to people that ended up betting it to place, which was smart. I didn't, of course. So
I think the place bet is one of the worst bets at the racetrack. I think they should just get rid of all the place pools, all the show pools, and just only have a win pool. That's me personally, though.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Well, I agree that the only way you're going to win at this game is to pick winners, and so that's why I don't like vertical bets either. I'm a horizontal bet guy. I don't want to bet who can run fourth. Well, hopefully anybody in the race can run fourth. So, unless I want to think I have the exact call and then go all or something, I'm not going to ever bet a superfecta. So, but horizontal, you pick winners. That's what I think you have to do to win.
I mean, that's the game. I also kind of cringe when I hear you say horizontal, though. I don't really like horizontal bets, given the state of the industry and how many races are so god awful. Do you only bet horizontal bets when you have like a 20-1 horse that you're singling a pick six, or only on big days where there's good competitive fields, or are you still playing like pick sixes and stuff nowadays?
No, I don't play the pick six hardly at all now, and it is for the reason if I wasn't really, sort of lazy now. I mean, my years were the 90s and early 2000s. That's when I played pretty seriously. But California, where I sort of played most of the time, is really difficult to play horizontal to find 5 races in a row. I mean, it's almost impossible to go 5 races without having 2 maidens for starters, and I'm not a maiden guy. So it's tough. I should switch to Oaklawn, but I'm kind of lazy. I have to learn a lot of new stuff. Oaklawn's my kind of track. No turf course. Don't run a million different distances. 5 furlongs, 5.5 furlongs, 6 furlongs, 7 furlongs. They run 6 furlongs as the sprint. So,
well, I mean, we used to hang out when we were at the racetrack, and I was, a punk kid that was trying to steal your long shots and figure out ways to argue with more conservative, younger friends of mine playing pick six tickets. And it was really competitive in a good way because it challenged us to beat each other. But I guess I was going to say that I remember you played baseball, and I know you went to Berkeley, and then I thought you did something in Louisiana or something. So when you say Arkansas, that's what made me think of that. So
I grew up in New Orleans, so I'm a fairgrounds guy.
Oh, that's right. Because Matt do some television on the fairgrounds too?
Well, he went to Tulane. So,
okay.
You should say he went to the fairgrounds and also got a degree at Tulane at the same time. But yeah.
So is that where it all started for you? Like, where did you? Well, probably not. But where did you?
I started going to the track really early with my father, but we had to travel because we were in Texas then. But then when we moved to New Orleans, I was about 14. I started going to track pretty much every day. It's a long meet in the fairgrounds, and from Thanksgiving through April, and I went almost every day. 14, 15, 16, 17, those years of my life, and it was great. Fairgrounds was really a cool place. New Orleans, I feel like a great city. So,
well, New Orleans will expand your mind a little bit too, and it'll help you not just on the Bourbon Street alcohol, waste your mind. I'm talking more about the creative arts and the alternative thinkings and the voodoo. And I don't know if you ever saw the episode on the reality show I did where I took the guys to this voodoo spot and they ended up breaking their curse and winning.
No, I didn't see that, but
you never saw the show I did?
Which show? The gambler show? I saw that. That was again
Horseplayers.
Horseplayer. Okay, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, Horseplayers. Yeah, it was it's on Amazon now, but it was 10 episodes. But anyway, one of the episodes we went to New Orleans, and the producers, most people don't know how reality television works, but producers come to the cast and they offer suggestions of directions for the show, and then they will nudge you. You can do whatever you want, but they brought up, let's get these guys to a voodoo shop and Helmer's is alternative, and we'll break the curse and then we'll see what happens. And sure enough, one of the guys, Lee, who's one of my favorite people on the show, he ended up qualifying for the NHC and stuff. But I love New Orleans. I love the music. I love the pop-up bands, the the inclusion. I've been to Jazz Fest once. But we'll get back to the horses in a sec. Do you ever do Jazz Fest? Well, I mean, now you're in Houston, right? So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's a relatively short drive. You can get over to New Orleans in about 6 hours. Yeah, no, I've done Jazz Fest many times. And remember, growing up when I did, which is ancient history. I mean, a long, long time ago in New Orleans, I went to a club for teenagers. You had to join, and we had on Friday and Saturday night Fats Domino, Ike and Tina Turner, Dave Bartholomew, Ernie Cato,
Wow.
yeah, all kinds of cool people. So it was great. Not to mention just all the local bands. The Radiator is a really good band.
Yeah, music is a thing for me. It helps me get my mind off of everything, because like I'm constantly thinking and analyzing and predicting what odds are going to be and what horses are going to be used in a tournament and what scenarios can happen. And when I listen to music, I'm just kind of absorbing energy and feeling something that's not in my head. So that's why it helps me out.
Yeah, well.
So I wanted to talk and frame some of this around. We had a chat with Vic Stauffer last night, and I thought it was really interesting because, we're at this point where we kind of need to reach out to the masses here. We need to create like a think tank around ways of not only stopping the bleeding, hopefully not putting tourniquets on, coming up with fresh ideas. And I know you have a historic background in marketing. That's why I brought that up in the beginning. You were weren't you like one of the youngest people at BBD&O or something like that?
I was young for being a creative director at BBDO, yeah.
Yeah, BBDO. So I remember that was one of the things I enjoyed hanging out with you, is because you're always thinking outside the box. And so you have a lot of experience in helping companies do well. I even remember, Gibson, I can remember stuff like you told me one ice cream company that was selling at a bad, volume, and all of a sudden they doubled their prices and they became, successful. So there's like stories like that are very interesting. But for horse racing, I wanted to pick your brain, and I want to invite on the entire community. We'll do more of these. We're going to start to have more shows around innovations, ideas to help racing, and not just like the typical stuff, but you have at least the foundation that you can give, I think, some of the viewers and myself. What are some like key ideas and focuses or focal points that we can use to, on one end, address the dying boomer, no offense, population of horse players, but and market to them, but also, and I'm not sure you're going to have the answers, but I just want to continue to build, a database of all the ideas. But how can we get to grow this game again, given the competitive forces, given the fact that it's 2 or 3 times more expensive than a football bet? How do we attract new fans? So just walk me through your logic. If this was like an agency meeting and we're in Mad Men.
Well, first of all, the whole subject of racing and sort of saving horse racing is not new to me. The first article I wrote on this was in 2005. That's 21 years ago. And the title, I think, was The Carrot That Can Save Racing. So save racing, I was talking about it back then. That's where a lot of people. Then it kind of fades away, and then it comes back, and now it's a big deal again. People are realizing, let's see, in your state, Hollywood's gone, Bay Meadows is gone, Golden Gate's gone. So suddenly, we better save racing. In good advertising, good marketing, and that's the solution to it all, by the way. I mean, everything is a box. Think of your product as a box of Tide soap. Put it on the table. You got to sell it. Well, every 7 years, they change the label. They add orange or lemon or something. They do something to keep it revitalized. Racing is the same old box. In fact, I wrote an article in 2013, so 8 years later, the box, racing needs a new box. And first of all, you have to do good advertising, you have to know your prime prospect. A lot of companies don't. They know who they want to be their prime prospect. Well, that's garbage, but you have to know your prime prospect. Racing is probably the only company or the only situation I've ever seen where I'm not sure they know what their product is. So not only do they not know who they're selling it to, they don't even know what it is. That's tough to overcome that. So, and what I mean by they don't know what their product is, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, whenever, it was a sport. It was, in fact, it was America's #1 spectator sport. And it was accurate when you consider how many tracks there are, how many days they run. More people watched horse racing live, went to the facility than any other sporting event. So it was America's #1 spectator sport. Well, guess what? That's not true anymore. And so as they finally started to realize that, and recently the big word is entertainment. We're not a sport. By the way, it's not even in the sports section anymore. It's not covered in sports. Okay, so it's not a sport, guys. Forget it. I mean, yes, the jockeys are athletes. Yes, the horses are athletes. All that wonderful stuff. I'm not knocking any of those people, but you can't sell it as a sport anymore. Okay, entertainment. Okay, let's say we want to get new people into this game. Okay, it's a game, by the way. I'm sort of ahead of myself. If you want to get new people in, let's bring them out to the track. What are they going to do at the track? This is entertainment now. Well, let's see, should we go to the movies or should we go to the track? Okay, you go to the track, and what do? You stand around. And every 30 minutes, there's a 2-minute race, which usually you can't see. So you have to go and watch a monitor. Okay, that's kind of I'm being harsh, but I'm trying to make the point of, and you can stand in, if there happens to be any people there, which there isn't anymore, but if there are people there, you're standing in line a lot. If you go to on a big day, you stand in line, you can't see the race. It's really doesn't work very well as entertainment either. It's a game. It has to be marketed as a game, and the prime prospect are people who like to gamble. And that's a growing, highly competitive group of people. That's a huge market. And racing has an argument that they may be the best bet because you can think about it. I used to call the Pick Six the lottery for thinking people, because it's 6 numbers you have to come up with, but you can think about what those 6 numbers are going to be, as opposed to go, oh, let's see, 7, 12. It's not like that. So that's what racing has to do. They have to know their prime prospect and how to reach that prime prospect, and with the right message and winning money. I mean, the Derby is next week, right? Last year in the Derby, the most important thing about this year's Derby, oh, and by the way, the Derby, the most exciting 2 minutes in sports, okay? Do you know how long NBC is covering it next Saturday?
I mean, hours. Just
NBC, not FanDuel and Peacock, and just NBC. 5 hours. 5 hours for the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. Well, I don't know who doesn't go to sleep during that. I don't know who watches 5 hours of that.
Yeah.
But it should probably be an hour, but I think that's unrealistic to ever get them to do that. But maybe 2 hours. Again, it's bad packaging. But it's hard to explain because there's so many things they need to do. Let me give you an example of a prime prospect situation. At BBD&O, we got the Winnebago account. Okay, they make motorhomes. You know motorhomes, right? Well, when we got them, they were advertising in NFL football on Sundays. And the owner of Winnebago, he really likes NFL, and he likes to see his commercials. And people would say afterwards on the golf course, man, I saw your commercial the other day in the Packer game. And so that's kind of how they did it. Well, when we got the account, we started looking at who the prime prospect, who's the most likely person to go buy Winnebago. And what we found out was that it is somebody who already owns a recreational vehicle. They own a camper or a trailer or maybe another motorhome. Well, if you advertise on Sunday afternoon in NFL football, guess where a lot of those people are? They're at the lake. They're hunting. They're fishing. They're out. They're not watching the game, particularly back then when there wasn't Starlink or something for the Winnebago to have. Mm-hmm. So what did we do? We ran the entire campaign Thursday nights, because Thursday night the guy's sitting there watching TV and he's thinking about that, and Winnebago commercial comes on and he's thinking, man, I'd rather be leaving in that tomorrow afternoon than in that thing sitting in my driveway. So we hit the prime prospect with the right message. Racing needs to do more of that. They need to find out who their prime prospect is.
Here, Gibson, Gibson, repeat yourself real quick. There's a little break in the stream there. So say that last 5 seconds again about after on the Thursday night.
Well, we ran commercials for Winnebago on Thursday night where the viewer, the prime prospect, is sitting there planning his trip for the next day thinking, boy, I wish I was in one of those Winnebagos instead of that thing in my driveway right now. So we hit the prime prospect at a perfect time, and we really got sales going for Winnebago.
Yeah, timing is important. You touched on some things that words are worlds to me in personal and in everything I do, because it's a force that I'm exerting into the world. That's why karma is, to me, real. If you're going to declare something and put that into the field, whether it's you're going to say you like a horse, whether you're going to say you're going to tell someone you're going to pick them up, or you're going to show up at a time, or you're going to deliver on a product, or convert, whatever. That's why the precision is really important right now, because of the delicate nature racing is in, and the words that we use, game versus sport, I think is really important. Because if the goal isn't the goal to get a person to bet $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year, which is roughly 20% of that is the risk. So is that how you would measure success? Is how many new gamblers are coming into the market? How would you measure success? Let me ask you that.
Well, I guess you measure success based on the handle that goes up. So that's a combination of people that are currently playing, increasing their bets, and getting new people to play the game, to convince them that if they enjoy gambling, rather than sit there with their phone and try to figure out whether the next guy up's going to hit a home run and what kind of odds they can get on that instant deal, that maybe it's better to look at racing as an option. By the way, knowing your prime prospect, the biggest problem racing has, I think, is that the prime prospect is at home. He's on his sofa. I saw your show yesterday, and the guy said, he went to the track with his dad, and that's an important thing. Well, I went to the track with my dad. Matt went to the track with me, but people don't even leave their house now, so they don't go to the track. The prime prospect is at home. The prime prospect is off track. And the numbers are so outrageously imbalanced that you don't understand why racing doesn't get it. I looked before the show today. I went online and looked at Friday Santa Anita. And I have it written down here. Friday is Santa Anita. Of course, I can't find it. About 3,200 people were at the track. They bet $388,000. Off track, intra and interstate, was about $6 million. 95% of the money is bet off track. That's where your prime prospect is. So forget trying to, that's where you've got to concentrate. Get them to play on their phone at home, on the sofa, whatever. That's the future.
Yeah, so it isn't even the future, it's the present, right? It's been like that for quite some time. So Shu's point was, if we lose the introduction to the races, then we're gonna miss out on all those breadcrumbs. And I understand why he feels that way, but it really comes back to money. How much does it cost to get somebody to go to the racetrack and then get them there and then go through that whole experience? It's like, if you can do things digitally and put together, there's so many varieties of things, between live streaming, between, the communities that are through YouTube, through even the ADWs now are doing stuff. Like there's so many of us.
So
what's that?
I said everything, the world's changing, the times are changing, if you want to use Bob Dylan. But racing doesn't want to change. They want it to be the same way. And they want people to come to the track, and they want people to do this or that. But you don't make it, if you're a shoe company and you're selling, saddle Oxfords, you're in trouble. You better switch to tennis shoes, because that's what people are wearing now. So you have to make adjustments.
Well, yeah, you've always had that ability, that instinct to kind of like say things that are needed to be said, or that are kind of buried in the subconscious and the unconscious. But you're a realist, and so you're not afraid of calling a spade a spade. And I think let's go through this a little bit, and then we'll touch more on the betting side. But so from your eyes, prime prospect number one is whom right now? Is it still at this point in time, given the fact that so many people are dying and that so many people in racing are finding other alternatives? Is the prime prospect, is there one? Is it a 40-year-old engineer that's like a day trader? Is it a 60-year-old guy who loves football and likes horse racing? Like, how do you segment that out?
Well, I don't know exactly how to do that, but it's people that like action. It's people that like to gamble. I mean, that's your prime prospect. Somebody that's gambling and other stuff. One of the interesting things about the whole concept of a racino, where you add slot machines or other forms of gambling to the racetrack, the most important thing there is it would bring gamblers to the racetrack. People would be coming to play slot machines or blackjack or whatever, but they are gamblers. They like to gamble. They like to take risks. And while they're there, you have to convince them that maybe the better game to be playing while they're there is at the track. So that's the whole concept of that. You know, racing was accused, and I guess to some degree it's accurate, way back when, of not wanting to be on TV too much because people wouldn't come to the track. And so they passed in the 50s and 60s, and mainly the 50s and 60s, I guess, a lot of opportunities to be on television because maybe people wouldn't come to the track if it was on TV. Well, that didn't work out too well for them. They lost an awful lot of opportunity for people to find out about them because they stayed off of television. Well, that's kind of what you're talking about today. No, let's get everybody out to the track. They're not going to come. Mm-hmm. If you built a track today in Los Angeles, let's say that you got really hot at the tournaments and you became a billionaire and you wanted to save racing in California, and Hollywood's gone, Bay Meadow's gone, and you wanted to build a new track. Would you build it in Beverly Hills? Would you buy 100 acres in Beverly Hills and build a track? How about Malibu? You want to build a track in Malibu? No, you build it, outside of Bakersfield somewhere, and put up stands like at a high school football game, because not a lot of people are going to go to the track, but they're going to bet it from their living room.
I mean, it's the inevitability. It's the evolution of humankind. We went to a wheel. We went to dentistry. We went to medicine, to pasteurization, to canned foods, to vehicles, to telephone, to internet, to AI. And so at this point in time, there's, like I said, it's about the money it costs to acquire the new customers and how expensive it is to try and find a better, and get them in person, when the majority of the people that want to go to the track aren't really interested in betting like big money anyway, because the people that like to bet big money are the ones that are, hardcore gamers or engineers or day traders or thinkers or just mathematicians.
Let's go back to the message for a minute. Okay. Let's say that we know who the prime prospect is and some idea. Now what do we want to say to him? Well, what racing has been saying is, boy, this is fun. Look at me. Look at all the people jumping up and down as the horses run down the stretch. That's been sort of the message forever. Well, that's boring, and it's not selling the game. Next weekend at the Kentucky Derby on Saturday, the Derby card, if they do what they did last year, handle-wise, they'll do $350 million. Now, let's do, I don't know what the actual takeout average is, but let's make it easy for me and say it's about 20%.
Yeah.
That means 80%, or $280 million, is going to be paid out next Saturday in winning tickets. That's what you tell people. You want a piece of that? You want a piece of $280 million next Saturday? Watch the card at Churchill and make some bets. That's what you tell them. You show them, if you're going to run print ads in the newspaper, take pictures of the actual tickets. Show pick three, total bet $16, winner $1,982. Show a bunch of winning tickets. Show the money that you can win playing the game. That's what they've got to do. Don't show me, the jockey jumping off the horse or the photos of the horses coming down the stretch. Show me the money. And
Show me the money.
Show me the money. Right. It's a good line. Somebody ought to use it.
You probably wrote it as you drink the Coke. My God, you're still drinking Coke. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So this whole idea of getting the messaging right around the pot prize is important. That will pique their interest in a day where focus is really difficult to maintain.
Christian, I think it was 2005 or 2006, the pick 5, not a bet that I play, but the pick 5 at Churchill on Derby Day, ending, the actual Derby itself paid $845,000. The superfecta on Derby Day. Okay? They never mentioned it. Yeah. On the coverage, they never mentioned it. I mean, it's crazy.
I mean,
wow,
it does.
Somebody won almost $1 million at the track at Churchill on Derby Day. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's the thing is everyone is so short-sighted in my eyes. Like, everything's about the next broadcast, the next race, getting through it, not building a long, 2 to 5 year business plan or marketing plan, and planting the seeds and using the same communication. Like, that's one thing I'm big on the show, is when I talk to Shu, and I'll bring him on in a minute. But having a boundary condition, and I know you hated this when I would ask you when I was a kid, what's the probability, whatever, and you would just cringe. But you knew there were horses, like, I remember La Jolla Shores, a horse that was like having all these weird things that was going on in its history. And I had all these excuses, and it was at Del Mar, and it was like a turf race, and the horse won at 20-1. And you couldn't necessarily put a number on it, but you're like, that's a good bet. And obviously pretty much any horse that's 20-1 is a good bet if you like it, if you got enough behind you. But that's the thing, is these themes of communication. So prize money, and also like, to me, odds. Like, let's talk about that real quick. Odds versus money line versus probability. Knowing that everyone sees like 5 or 6 or 10 or 20, and they don't really know what that means. Do you have like a vision? I know Del Mar, there was a time where they put probability next to the odds, or the percentage of the money in the pool next to the odds. What would you do, given that you've got money line and you want to attract sports bettors plus 500, you got 5-1, and you got 18%? How would you use those terms, given that we need messaging around gambling? Do you have any ideas about that?
No, I have no ideas about that. I really don't. I mean, all I want to do is tell the right person that the best game is horse racing, and you can win a lot of money if you know what you're doing. And the learning curve, which scares the hell out of the industry, all you need, give them the right incentives, and they'll deal with the learning curve. I mean, tell me that I can make $1 million by learning Greek, and I'll learn Greek. Okay, so that's the deal. That it becomes an incentive. It's realistic. These are real people that cash these tickets. They're not, a Stanford PhD guys that are geniuses or something and have some edge. You can work hard and win at this. And, I'm a charts player. That's really slow. That's a lot of work. But to me, that's the best way to analyze a race, is I need to look at the charts for that day to find out whether 109.2 is really good or not. If I'm at Oakmont, there's probably 5-6 furlong races that day, and if that's the slowest time, well, then it's not as impressive. So I have to, but that takes a lot of time. That's the way I play. I'm sort of old fashioned. I realize that. But when I used to go to Del Mar in the winter from Minnesota, it was 6 days a week for starters. And the races were full, and I'd leave the track, pick up the farm, leave the track, pick up food, go home, and start handicapping from about 7 to midnight, get up the next morning from about 9 to noon. So about 8 hours, then head over to Del Mar. And people say, well, what do you do on Tuesday, which was the day off? I say, I do my laundry. I mean, it's a full-time job. So, but, I did well. I had some good, I was a pick six player back then. So I did well. But
I know you were one of the best pick six players of all time, and I know you have some stories on that. And I wanted to go into that. I also wanted to say real quick, because you brought up something that made me think too, that gentleman there's a church that was going under, and you sent me an article. And again, it got no publicity except a few horse players saw it, but there was a church that was going under in or near Inglewood, and the owner of the church, I don't know if it was the minister or who, but took his remaining tithes, or I don't know, maybe it was his personal money, and he hit the pick six for like a couple $100,000. And it's stories like that. And to your point about hard work, I'm sure this wasn't a guy who's going to take money from the church, or even it's probably his own money, but it was at that point. And so there's ways to win at this. And you inspired a bunch of us when we were younger, to take it serious and to not just like goof around. So, and I want to bring on Shu he's a guy, if I don't know if you saw my last show, he's in there. He's a great horse player, fun, bigger than life guy, average horse player. But I wanted to have you kind of like talk to some of your scores in the pick six real quick, because I know you've hit so many pick sixes that are crazy. And I know you even have a story. Well, let's just talk about horses right now, but tell me about some of the stories that you have with the pick six and how much different it was back then when you were at Canterbury and everything. And welcome, Shu. It's good to have you, even though we can't see your face because you're probably upset about, Renegade getting the one.
What's up, boys? Under the weather big time, but I just jumped on board. And first of all, Gibson, I'm a big fan of your sons. I met him years ago at Monmouth Park. Matt's an absolute great dude, great handicapper. Love Matt. Love all the TVG guys. I tweeted out this morning, the biggest thing we're going to miss about FanDuel and TVG are the mornings like we have leading up to the Derby. This breakfast at the Downs, which is phenomenal. I mean, the whole crew does such a good job. And this is where I don't think the industry realizes how much we're going to miss FanDuel TV on mornings like today, when you can wake up and watch all the works and get the interviews behind the scenes they just do such a great job, and it's going to be such a miss for racing moving forward. But I have to say, Gibson, you said something when I first tuned in, and it's been something I have literally gotten in arguments with racetrack executives. And listen, I'm a marketing guy. I got a marketing degree at the University of Maryland, but this isn't rocket science. These racetracks do such a good job at telling us when there's a carryover, when the turf pick 3 starts, how much a pool is here. Oh, we have mandatory Rainbow 6 at Gulfstream Park Sunday. And you know what they never do is they never tell you who wins and their tickets to prove it. I had a big time horse player at Gulfstream Park when Keeneland had that big pick 5 last year that paid, I think, $400,000. My buddy hit it, and he sent me the ticket, and I said, am I allowed to post it? He goes, sure. I posted it on Twitter. I said, hey, it was hit at Gulfstream Park. It was a Keeneland pick 5 or pick 6. I can't remember. And not one person from either marketing team at Gulfstream or Keeneland retweeted that post. And I reamed them both out. And I said, what do you guys do? This is like if you played the lottery every day and they never told you who won the lottery. Would you have trust in the system? Would you want to play it? No. You want to see that some, wife in Oklahoma with 5 kids just hit the lottery for $600 million. You want to give yourself that hope that I can do it. You also, as a gambler, want to see how they did it. Oh, they singled here. Okay. Oh, they took a shot there. They went all in that race where I had an opinion and they caught a 30-1 shot. And racetracks don't do it. It's absurd to me. FanDuel, DraftKings, all the sports apps, every same game parlay that's bet on a football game, you see it on Twitter, win or lose. Every bet Dave Portnoy makes on a football game, they post it on Twitter. Horse racing does such a bad job of marketing this. And when we talked to Vic Stauffer and Christian, right, yesterday we had the talk with Vic, and I was trying to make the argument that as racetracks close, it's going to be a really bad thing, because a lot of people that were born into racing or went with their fathers or grandfathers or uncles to the racetrack, they fell in love with the sport and they said, all right, I'm going to gamble. And then they got a real job, made more money, and they could gamble some more. And as racetracks close, we're going to lose that opportunity to bring our kids and grandkids into this game. And his argument, which we understand because we've been in horse racing our whole lives, is what a great betting product this is, right? What great scores you have. The problem is, unless you're born into going to this racetracks with your father, your grandfather, you're never going to know that because the marketing teams at these racetracks don't tell you about it.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with you in terms of what's happening with racing. The unfortunate reality, though, that I think you have to factor in is that people don't leave their house anymore, much less go to the racetrack. So somehow we have to take the racetrack to the people. We have to take we have to put the, FanDuel was leaving us, but hopefully somebody will fill in. But we have to take the product into the house because they don't live in their house anymore. They don't go into the track. And part of it, I mean, Christian mentioned sort of a realistic part of it, which is if it's going to cost me $20 to park at Del Mar and $10 to get in, and I got to buy a seat, and it costs me $12 for a beer or something, I'd rather spend that 50 or 60 or 70 bucks at home betting the first 3 or 4 races at the track. So it's a problem. I went to the track with my dad. Matthew certainly went to the track with me starting at about 5 years old. I mean, Matthew was calling the races from, with horse and jockey on the radio when he was like 5 or 6 years old. So that's the way I came up, like you probably. And so I can relate to that. But unfortunately, tracks are in California. I don't know where you are, Shu, but in California, where Christian is, all the tracks are closing. And it's just a shame. So but somehow we've got to reach the prime prospect in his house probably and get him to realize that this is the best play. Right now, 95% of the money just about on these tracks is being bet off track. And so that's where the money is, and that's who they've got to get to bet horses and not, who's going to hit the next home run or who's going to get a first down or how many, what the over-under is going to be in the third quarter of the Laker Rockets game. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And, the racetrack experience where and I give credit to a lot of tracks in this country because you go to Gulfstream, you go to Monmouth. I bring my daughters to Monmouth all the time. I'm a Monmouth Park guy. And the racetrack experience is phenomenal. I mean, the range now of food and beverage you have at tracks. Breeders' Cup obviously does a phenomenal job. Derby week, everyone going to Louisville this week is going to have a fantastic time. Keeneland, on and on. I mean, the racetrack experience, and especially when you're bringing your kids and your grandkids to get them into this game, I don't know how we replace it. And I understand that everyone's using ADWs and betting on their phones, but to get people into it, you got to bring them out. You got to experience it. It's like almost like watching hockey on TV. Hockey's great on TV, but when I brought my daughters to a Devils game live, they fell in love with hockey. It's a whole different experience going to a live hockey game than watching it on TV.
And if you can get these people to come to the track after they kind of know what they're doing, they know how to bet, and they have confidence they can win, and they're into the game, then it's a lot better. If you go to the track and you don't know the game, it can be a little boring because there's a race every 25 or 30 minutes. You stand, if there's people there, you stand in line to bet, and so on the other hand, if you go to the track and you know how to play the game, well, then it becomes exciting. The time between the races, you're talking about the next race and who's going to win and blah, 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 blah. So that's much better. You brought up the Breeders' Cup. Let me just real quickly, while it's on my mind, say that I wrote a little piece for the Blood Horse recently, within the last few months. And one of the things I wanted to do was I went to the Breeders' Cup race. When the Breeders' Cup's on TV for something like I'm in Central Time from noon to 7 or some, like everybody's going to sit around for 7 hours and watch all these races. It's not going to happen. So what I want a race every 15 minutes. At home, people are betting at home. The Breeders' Cup, as fun as it is for us and to go there and all that, the Breeders' Cup should be a tool for getting more people into racing. And so those people who are at home, they're going to be watching on TV. That's the market, not getting people to the track, but getting people to watch at home. If you have a race every 15 minutes, remember there's no lines at home. People are betting on their phone. They can bet really quick, so they don't have to go stand in line. If you have a race every 15 minutes, it's really going to be action packed. And the way to do that is 2 tracks. So the Breeders' Cup is at Keeneland and Churchill, and you're back and forth every 15 minutes. You have a race. That's exciting. Hey, I watched the Masters last week. Okay, I watched the Masters. Now, golf is not one of your fast games. It's pretty slow. I saw a shot every 30 seconds. So-and-so putt on the 18. When just go over to Bob. Bob's in the trap at 16. I mean, you're moving all the time. And so, we were talking earlier with Christian about the Derby. The Derby is, quote, the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. NBC is covering it for 5 hours. Well, I don't know who's going to sit on the sofa for 5 hours and watch that. So I hope that people can watch the best parts. They probably won't cover the tournament. By the way, again, sorry I'm going all crazy here, but tournaments, people like to watch poker. They found that out, obviously. And the little camera with seeing the whole card seemed to be the key. They like to watch good people play poker. I think they like to watch good people play the horses. And racing has a huge advantage because I'm watching at home, and if I think this guy Christian is pretty sharp, and right before the race I find out that he bet 3,000 to win on the 6 horse, I can bet the 6 horse if I want to. I can be involved in the game. Now Christian may not like that because he thinks that a bunch of people are going to bet the
No
6
chance.
horse. But yeah, see, Christian's selfish here. He's not selling the sport.
Gibson.
Tell him Gibson. Tell him
Hold
Gibson.
on.
Give it to him.
Hold on. Gibson, okay, on Breeders' Cup Day, it's a little different. You realize on an average day at the racetrack, if you put $7,000 down on a horse at 12 to 1, he's going off at 6 or 7 to 1. So there's no point in betting the horse.
No. Well, it depends on the tournament. Okay, it depends on the size of the pools. I'm talking about the Breeders' Cup right now, where the pools are rather large. And every player at the final table, because that's the way they should do it. They have a final table at the Breeders' Cup. So whatever leads up to that final table, they're there. And each one of you guys at some point before a race, right before a race, has to give your horse out. And people at home on their phone can bet it if they want to. But I'm just saying it's getting people involved and watching really good players. And again, one of the cool things to me about some of the tournaments is I remember early on when I first started looking at tournaments. I'm not a player, and you know why, Christian, but I'm not a player in the tournaments, but they're what I would call sort of everyday people. It's not like, a bunch of guys from MIT sitting around on computers figuring out something using AI. It's plumbers and lawyers and, whatever. You don't have to be some sort of whiz person to do it. And so anyhow, those are just a couple of other points.
Gibson, if I can real quick dovetail on your time in between races at the Breeders' Cup. So I was at Del Mar this fall, and I made friends with a nice older couple from the Wales, and they go to racing events all over the world, Dubai, Saudi, and they came to their first Breeders' Cup in America. And so I saw them at the owner's pavilion, whatever. And later that night, I said, "Oh, so what did you think? How was your first day at the Breeders' Cup?" And they said, "Oh, my God, just beautiful. Del Mar, what a beautiful place. Everything was fantastic. But we can't believe how much time is in between your races." And it's like all the people do is talk about every horse and how this horse can win and how this horse can win. She said, "It's so boring." And I said, bingo, absolute bingo. It is dead air. And as much as I love Mike Joyce and your son and everybody, and they do such a fantastic job, there's only so many ways and times you can tell me how a horse can win or lose in the next race for 25, 35 minutes sometimes in between races. So I think you nailed that on the head. Absolute nailed it.
Yeah, the incredible thing is that when racing goes to the big days like the Breeders' Cup, a lot of times they lengthen the time. So at Del Mar, it may be 25 to 30 minutes, but before the Classic, it's an hour. You have to wait an hour for the Classic so they can talk it in the ground, and pretty soon, I leave the room. So again, tighten it up, get the action there, and that would be a big plus. Big days are big opportunities. So the Kentucky Derby, which is by far the biggest day in racing, and they bet much more than they do in all the Breeders' Cup races combined. Breeders' Cup, maybe the Triple Crown races, certainly the Derby. Build those things up, get people involved, show winners afterwards, show smart people winning. That'll help.
It makes a lot of sense. Boys, Christian, before you talk, I'm going to jump. I got to go to the pharmacy
Okay.
and pick up my scripts because I'm under the weather. Gibson,
Okay.
it was a pleasure to meet you. Like I said, big fan of your son. Heard a lot about your pick six stories, but I'm going to watch this afterwards and hear more about it. Christian, thanks as usual. And have a good day, boys.
All right.
Cool.
Go Renegade.
Thanks. So, he was good. I like that.
Yeah, he's a colorful guy. I wanted to touch on the things that you said there, because one of them, the first thing was kind of brilliant, but the revenue models that the Breeders' Cup makes off of Breeders' Cup is usually hinged to one track, but you just shattered my reality, and I think a lot of realities for others. Imagine a Del Mar versus Keeneland Breeders' Cup, where you have two tracks involved, right? Great product. Everyone would go on both sides. You don't have to go across the country, this and that, unless your horse is there. But you could have maybe all the grass races at one track, or all the 2-year-old races at one track. I don't know. You figure out the splits, right, based on maybe where the horses are doing or how they're doing. I don't even know how that would work. But imagine that. Like the first take is, oh my God, that's just too much money and this and that. But if you think about it, the Breeders' Cups, like at Del Mar, they're capped at like what, 30 or 40,000, I think, too. So they can only make so much money. And I think Keeneland's the same, even though they've done some more construction. So if you had Keeneland versus Del Mar, every 10 minutes there's a race, and you get through it in 2.5 hours. That's sexy. Gibson.
Yeah.
Respect.
No, that's the way to do it. Zip it up, make it work, make it exciting, make it play to your prime prospect today. They don't want to sit around for 40 minutes between races.
And the reason they do that is because the tracks are trying to get everybody to bet as much money. So I don't think it's a broadcast decision. I'm sure there's a piece of it, but realistically, now that NBC is owning racing, right, and they're going to probably, with this whole Preakness thing that Churchill got the IP for, there's a lot more that could come. But I like this idea of thinking about, if so, on one end, what's the way to prove it? That's going to be a risk. I don't know what the pilot is, but maybe you do it not on a Breeders' Cup day first, but maybe you do it on a like a pre-Breeders' Cup. I don't know. There's got to be some thoughts, some people, but I think this is one of the purposes of the show, is to get some juices flowing and think about the number one problem, which everyone agrees: too much time between races. There's only so much we can do, because the jockeys have to get off the horses and they have to warm up, and there's a lot of logistics. So you might be able to shave off 5 or 6 or 7 minutes possibly, and that would be rushing. So that's an alternative that's worth exploring. So we should think about that. And anything else you want to add to that before I move on to something else?
The people that are going to complain about that idea, the 2 tracks, every 15 minutes a race, my basic response to them is, I don't care. But their problem is, well, Ortiz is not going to be able to ride every race. He's going to have to choose what track he's at. So some of the jockeys, but on the other hand, more jockeys will be involved in pick 6 races. We'll have more opportunities. Trainers may have to watch one of their horses on TV. I'm sorry, because they're at Del Mar and they got a horse running at Del Mar, but they've also got one at Keeneland. So there's some of that, and those people are sometimes in powerful positions to complain. So you have to get through that aspect of it. But I think it would really make for an exciting racing day. Can you imagine going to a football game? You go to a football game, and now they have all these other sports, by the way, are adding clocks. Baseball has the clock on the pitcher now. He only has so many seconds before he has to throw the ball. Can you imagine going to a football game and having the team go into a huddle on offense, be in the huddle for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then come out? And you're sitting around going, it would be crazy. Well, racing is pretty slow, and if you're a good handicapper, let's be honest here, if you're a good handicapper, you've played it, and you've already you got your pick probably. Board may change you a little bit, and you may learn some stuff, but there's not a lot to do for 30 or 40 minutes. So anyhow, enough said on that idea, but it's a good one, I think.
Well, I think you're tapping into the attention span, the deficit disorder, like the dopamine spikes, the reels, the constant validation. Look at me, get me some likes, get me some views. I got to make sure that I'm like in the conversation. So that's a human evolution that's unfortunately tainting a lot of our younger generation, to the point where that matters more than someone's, feelings, or, their lives or their livelihood. So it's gotten into me, in that I am addicted to the red zone channel, to the point where I will not watch a football game anymore. And that's just, I can't sit there unless it's the Super Bowl, maybe it's a playoff game, maybe it's the fourth quarter. But this idea of patience and having artificial patience, even I can't watch NBA basketball. I can't sit there and it's like, okay, I'll watch March Madness a little bit, but still, even then, I want the last 5 minutes of the game, and that's when the drama is at its peak. So to me, the red zone for racing is what you brought up. We have the red zone in the sense there's a race every like 10 minutes, depending on what you're betting, right? But to do it on the elite day, you'd still have to answer the question of, how do you take a person who Shu says comes to the track with his father or whatever is introduced, getting them to bet 50,000 or 100,000 a year, which sounds like a lot, but you're only risking 20% of that, or maybe a little more. But that whole piece is this hand holding, right? What did our parents do? Our parents took us there, introduced it to us, told us what everything was based on the basics of the definitions, gave us a little map on what to bet, or how you gave us. I mean, you were the long shot god, like to all of us as kids growing up. Like, and it wasn't that you bragged about it. It wasn't like, I got this 20-1 shot, you guys got to bet. No, it's like, you're just like, yeah, I like this 20-1. I'll be singling probably this 20-1 in the pick six and this other 15-1 shot and spending $200. And lo and behold, you were actually somebody that made money doing that. But there's an awe to someone that can be humble with it and deliver. But like this addiction to speed. I mean, my God, I get so frustrated when I'm on driving my car and I have to get behind someone going 80 miles an hour. I'm on my internet and I'm dealing with, 30 megabits per second or gigabytes per second versus, 50 or whatever. So to me, how can we get players up to speed faster? And I know you're, a different generation, but that's, I think, a key piece to this, because even if we did the Breeders' Cup concept, like you talk about, faster races, 2 tracks, 2 sides, maybe there's all kinds of marketing that goes around it. It's really brilliant. But how can we get a player like, I know you probably don't know Griffin Johnson, but he's a famous YouTuber dude that got part of Sandman and got millions of people watching horse racing, but they're watching it, but they're not really betting on it. Although Sandman's odds were like 6-1. So it definitely did something. But I want you to think about that, and we can revisit this too in the future, but think about, how can we take the same concept of having this space, this wasted time that these people are going to the track, not learning how to manage if they're a gambler. We're talking about gamblers, like you said, just gamblers. How can we get the poker player, the sports bettor, the fantasy players to actually read a racing form, or what can we present in the racing form to get them to maybe, take it more serious?
Yeah. I'll think about it. In other words, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know. I know that, back just for a second on the concept of a couple of tracks and tightening the time. FanDuel, TVG, had the opportunity to do that. The problem that FanDuel had was they became the television outlet for every racetrack in the world. So you go to, some harness track in, Canada, to Del Mar, to so-and-so, and no player is going to play all those tracks. Unless they're crazy. You can't In other words, it would have been nice if Del Mar had done it. TBG in the summer had done a Saratoga Del Mar thing, where those are the two tracks they covered. That would have been interesting because you can organize it so it's about every 15 minutes there's a race, and it's all great racing, and you have a group at both tracks. That's an exciting, Saturday afternoon or Wednesday afternoon for that matter, or whatever, how you do it. That would make a lot of sense, as opposed to saying, oh, by the way, we got to go to Yonkers, we've got to go to Monmouth, we've got to go down to Sam Houston. I can't play all those tracks. No one does. So, but I can play Saratoga and Del Mar, or I can play Keeneland and so. I can play, Gulfstream. I can do that. And but they felt like they had an obligation or whatever to cover all of racing. They were sort of
the reason that happens is because they make more money per user on smaller tracks because they get better deals. And so they don't make the majority of their money betting, allowing customers to play the big tracks because the powers that be charge a premium price for their products. And so they steer people that way. And I think it's very probable that one of the reasons that there's going to be less coverage of racing on FanDuel is because they might have inside knowledge, or it's probably pretty straightforward that the customer is probably at least 20, 30, 50, 100% more valuable to them if they're betting on the prop home run bets versus the tracks where they have to give away 60, 70% of their revenue to those parties, which makes sense. You got to pay the sport, you got to pay the show. But I mean, it's just, I think with the New York stuff, and they have their own channel, and the TVG and FanDuel stuff, like there's kind of two, like you said this before, like there shouldn't be multiple, networks. I mean, there was an ESPN, there was an ESPN2, but that's because it's a little different. It's not just racing. So I'm not really, I don't see like a rosy outcome for racing on television regardless, because of the fact that it might make us happy. I might enjoy better content, or holding people accountable for what they say, like, and actually, trying to prove that they're really like accountable to the results of a situation and not just throwing horses around, and literally teaching someone, like, I don't understand why people don't talk about win betting. Why isn't every single discussion for at least half the shows for every race focused on just win? Just get players to understand how to win a horse race, and understand that out of all the possibilities of prediction is the easiest. Like, there's the least amount of chaos and variance, right?
Yeah, I'll take it a step further, and I don't think you'll agree with this, but people like to talk to me sometimes about what's known as money management, and they're really good, but they're not betting smartly, and so they didn't make money because of the blah blah blah. And I say, I don't buy that. Pick winners, and money management will take care of itself. And so I'm all for picking winners and the win bet. And but yeah, no, a lot of people that lose think it's because of their money management, and I understand to some degree that it can be, but I'm just saying, I always get back to the when you say pick winners and money management will take care of itself.
No, can you, and I'm going to be more technical. Can you derive the chances of a horse to win a race? Can you get it, whether it's a 30% chance, 2-1? Can you say 2-1 is the horse's chances, or 30%, however your brain works, plus 200? If you cannot predict things in terms of some rough quantifiable measurement, you're never going to be able to track yourself or understand in the long run what you're doing. And I know you're more of a creative. You're a total right brain guy, and you hate math. I know that. I've asked you about this for decades. But like, when it comes to like getting someone to get the money management to take care of itself, if you only bet to win, and literally 90%,
Yeah,
right? If you bet 90% of your money to win, no place, you gotta be a little more aggressive and understand that that's a bad bet. I think the place in the show should be only in the win. I think the place in the show should go away. But if you put the emphasis on the win bet, it's so much easier to look at your results and go back and say, okay, I hit a couple 3-to-1s. My God, I'm awful at even money shots. I can't believe how bad I am. And they're losing by noses, but they're losing. So I think the money management thing starts with simplicity, and Occam's razor, just use the most basic version of decision making to assign a tool to track yourself. So I love that. I wanted to go a lot of different places here because I know it's been awesome, and we have an hour. How much more time do you have, by the way, before you got to do something?
Yeah, I'm missing a baseball game, but just a few more minutes. What do you got?
Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask you a few things about you're a long shot guy. A lot of respect for to me, grown men bet prices, and I think that it takes a certain period of time to get the conviction and to be smart enough to know that you're not just throwing money away blindly at price horses. So I wanted you to kind of walk through just a few things. And I remember the DRF symposium like 15 years ago when there was a time when all the horse players, we got together in Vegas and we had this big symposium, and you spoke about, speed and fade and some of these angles and stuff in between horses and stuff like that. And it was always fascinating, but as a long shot guy, just kind of given the state of the age, there's the CAW guys that are smashing prices. I wanted to ask you, is the CAW stuff affecting your long shots? And then also, do you have any just kind of overall rules that you might want to encourage people on long shots to stay away from, or to consider, like, philosophies or strategies around?
Well, first of all, yeah, the betting you're talking about is affecting me, and it's affecting some of my prices. You bet the 12-to-1 and you win the race, and it turns out they went off at 6-to-1. That's not good. And so it's a big negative for me. And I don't obviously play as much as I used to play. I mean, I was a pretty serious player for maybe 3 or 4 months out of the year. I'd play the whole Del Mar meet, or I'd play almost all of Santa Anita back when I was playing California. But no, it's playing long shots. First of all, just the nature of people. I'll tell you one quick story. I used to be asked every once in a while, I even did this at Del Mar a few times, would I talk to a group before the races and go over the races,
Yeah.
And this happened to me several times, but I remember it the most at Canterbury. They asked me to fill in for a guy, and I was in the paddock, and there was pretty many people there. I mean, a couple hundred people. And I had to go over all the races. Well, I found myself the first 3 or 4 races constantly saying, I don't really like this race very much, but here's who second race. And then I started saying, but by the way, when we get to the 6th and the 7th, and I got some horses I really like. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, so I go through the whole day like that. I get to the 6th and 7th races, and I give them these 2 horses that I really like. They're both 12 or 15-to-1 in the program. Mm-hmm. And so they're all listening in the whole bit. And both those horses won. And both of them went up in price. They both went up over 20-to-1. The big price scared the people away. I guarantee you, the people that I talked to some people afterwards, they may have bet $2 on each, or $5 on each one of my horses. They get to those prices, they bet 2 instead of 5 because it's 20-to-1 and it's probably not going to win. And so I have to remind them that it's the people betting that determine the odds. So look around you; they're not necessarily the sharpest tacks in the world that are doing this. And so don't get too and people bet jockeys and they bet connections, and don't get too carried away with the fact that it's 20-to-1. That's a negative. That means it can't win. But that's just sort of built into people. They see that and they go, well, he's probably not going to win. Not anything about why he might win, but just the odds themselves scare people away. Mm-hmm. If somebody tells me they really like a 20-to-1 shot, and for some reason I like them as a handicapper, or if I really like a 20-to-1 shot and it goes off and then all of a sudden it's at 25, I bet more. Now it's at 30-to-1 on the board. I bet more. I don't say, oh, I must be wrong.
Yeah.
So I liked the horse one time. I'll tell you this quick story. I remember the horse. I remember his name. His name was Dancing Candy.
I remember that horse. He was like a 10,000 claimer at Santa Anita.
Okay. I was at Del Mar playing Santa Anita at the facility in Del Mar, the off-track facility there. And I was studying the form the night before, and this horse, his entire past performance thing was finishing 4th, 5th, and 6th. Okay, he never even finished in the money, 4th, 5th, 6th. And he was running for 25, 20, 25, 20. He dropped to 16, and I looked at the race, the charts, and he finished 4th. 3 horses that beat him had all dropped from 25. And so it was this hidden class play. The only time he'd run for 16, he got beat by a bunch of 25,000. When he was at 20 and 25, he was obviously getting beat by those horses. Well, all of a sudden he drops to 12-5. And there's nobody else in the race. In other words, all the horses are 10 and 12-5 horses. Not even a 16 dropped down there for him. Well, he looked fantastic to me. Well, his morning line was 15. He went off at 45-1. I won more money on that one horse than ever before. I just kept betting, and he won. And I had one real concern. The jockey, which normally I don't even like to think about, was John Atherton. Well, I hardly knew who John Atherton was, and so that made me a little, but I knew on the one hand, no one was going to bet it because it had John Atherton on it. So that was positive. But I told a lot of people at the facility that in Del Mar, I really like this horse. And it was interesting to see how many people played it, how much they played it. An older couple, older then, I gave them the horse. I said, I really like this horse. And Gussie, the woman, bet a double. It was in the first couple of races, bet a double. And luckily, she bet with it won. And so we went crazy. But people tend to bet smaller on it. And if I'd given them a 7-2 horse I really liked, everybody would have jumped on it. But the 45-1 was too much.
And that double was like the old school double, like first race, last race.
Yeah.
Is that
So
right?
it's interesting the way people think. But again, I find these horses. Bob Dylan likes to say he doesn't know how he wrote all those songs in the beginning. He hasn't the foggiest idea how those words came to him. And he became extremely religious because of this, by the way. But he said, the early songs, the "It's All Right, Mom, Only Bleeding." He says, where do those words come from? Darkness at the break of noon, shadows of the silver spoon. He said, I don't know where that came from. Well, sometimes, horse players I know, including myself, will talk a little bit about where it came from. I mean, you're sort of seeing the horse and you're zeroing in on it, but it's just looking better and better and better. And I don't know exactly why it's looking better and better and better. And everything I look at, it just comes together. And so they call it the gambling gods or the racing gods or whatever. But there is that somehow. Like I say, Dylan says he couldn't write any of those songs today. He's still writing wonderful songs, but he couldn't write any of those songs. He doesn't know where the words came from. So sometimes I don't exactly know where the horse came from.
I remember, it's funny, my memory's all over the place with you. And we haven't talked more than once in the last couple of years, maybe. But didn't you you just called it you called it voices, right? You said you get voices, right?
Yeah, voices, right.
Yeah. So you do get these downloads, as my spiritual friends would say, or my hippie Burning Man friends would say, but you get these moments of clarity, and you're like, why did I not see that in that horse? Why did I not think about that scenario? Now, in your case, Dancing Gandy probably wasn't a voices horse, but you probably got a little tip like, whoa, I should look a little closer at this and so forth. And on that Dancing Gandy fact, the reason I remember that horse is I do remember you mentioning him decades ago, but there was a guy, I was at the OTB in Surfside that day. And I remember that horse winning, and I remember not having it. And so when you lose horses, and especially with long shots, with me, I've always been a flyer guy. Ever since I was a kid, I was always trying to find value, and instinctively I knew that was the way you needed to play. I pushed it too far, but I remember this gentleman with long hair who I always see at the track with flip-flops. I remember the guys, there's like Dale and all these other dudes that would just be there all the time. And I was the kid that snuck in and didn't want to pay the $3. Would go around the back and everything. But this dude, he hit it. And I was wondering why. That's what you do as a kid. You're like trying to learn. And and he mentioned something like you said, that the horse was just completely overmatched in his previous races and stuff like that. And it's very rare. Like I probably hit, less than a dozen horses above 50-1, but you remember every single one of those horses and you remember why. And that's that special charm and je ne sais pas about a long shot, because when you have it, to me, style matters in betting too, and not to try to get into the ego, but if you're going to win a playoff game on a Hail Mary, it's a heck of a lot different than, making precision throws and or, finding ways like Brady did with Tampa Bay to throw that touchdown at the end of the first half. Against, I think it was KC, right? So it's like there's the style, but I think you've talked about, number one, being different, how important it is to go against the grain. Don't let the odds, if the horse goes from 20 to 40, sway you, right? So that's important, because for every horse that you like at 20 that goes off at 40, I mean, you're probably going to break even, I would imagine, even if you did make that bet. Whether you're going to bet more, it's up to you. But I definitely relate to that. And I think that the devil in the details is something you're talking to as well, is looking at the charts and the amount of work that you went through and that you taught a lot of us. Like, it was just invaluable. And, tracing and understanding variance and subjectivity. We talked about figures on a show or so ago, yesterday, even a little bit. And it's like, everyone's got a figure. Everyone wants to put a number on a race, but great. What does that do? It's just telling you what the horse ran. It's not telling you what it's going to do next. You still have to look at that, compare it to everything else, compare it to every horse, compare it to against the conditions, and put a number on it or a boundary odds line. So I guess, is there anything else like on the, I do want to ask you one more story about the cheerleader interference story about your betting, because that's always one of my favorites. But I do want to ask you, just before we end with that, do you have any other things that people should be doing when they're betting? Like, like what should they not do? Also, when it comes to betting, you mentioned when betting is important, but just real quick, close that out for us, because a lot of people, like, you're a god or a godfather to the Pick Six players and to a lot of the people in industry, and you've dedicated your life to this game, and your son is a credible speaker, gentleman, class act, very gifted horse player. So it's like your legacy is living here. But I wanted to see if you wanted to give anybody, anything, I'm not asking for specific angles, but is there anything you want to steer people towards or away from?
No, I think you have to be resilient. I think you have to realize that, the best players in the NBA don't shoot 50%. You're going to lose a lot of races. You don't have to win them all. You haven't lost the next race. I used to tell people that all the time, because they would get so down when they lost, and say, well, you haven't lost the next race. But yeah, you mentioned that Vegas racing farm situation where, and I talked in that about edges and trying to find all these little tiny things. And and I'll tell you this one. I mean, this is, because I always tell people this is an example of an edge, and that is, I know people that make a big deal out of equipment changes. Blinkers on, blinkers off, Lasix on, Lasix off, etc. And the thing about blinkers on is, or blinkers off or whatever, is that when a horse is running his first race, it's not an equipment change. So they don't say that the horse is running in blinkers. And I found that first timers that have blinkers are usually more seriously, the effort's more serious, either because they're going to show speed, but maybe because they can take turns better or whatever. If it's probably a one-turn race. But anyhow, little edges like that, people sort of like to hear that, because it's something they never thought about. I mean, it's just a silly little thing I bring up, but it's true. First time out, it's not an equipment change. So you might want to check, if you're in a situation where you can, and see whether a horse has blinkers on or not, particularly if it's a horse bred for speed. You think there's some of the workouts indicated may be quick. If it comes out with blinkers on, note that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's also a tricky move, right? Because if you do that, you kind of compromise the fact that you could take them off, or that you could put them on at a horse, because mental is such a big part of horsemanship. And if you start that way, then you can't introduce it as a way to kind of, set off a light bulb. Like you said, I think you're right. If they're looking to win early, they're going to do that. Okay.
I would
then
also tell people, by the way, to stay away probably from what's called inside information. and tips from owners, particularly because they always think their horse is going to win, or trainers, or whatever. Come up with a horse, basically yourself. In terms of other good players, I mean, I know a lot of good players, and
Yeah, you do.
but if a good player says to me, or if I'm watching TVG, Matt Carothers is a good player, I know him well. If he says that he likes the 6 horse in this race, I'm not going to bet the 6 horse necessarily. In fact, I'm probably not going to bet the 6 horse. But if I'm putting together a pick 5 and I look at that race and I'm 4 deep and I didn't use the 6 horse, now I'm going to at least look at it a second time. And so that's, to me, the way you do it. You kind of use these people to make you take a second look, particularly on I know you don't like these plays, on a horizontal play, if I'm going to go deep in a race. It's like the pick 6. You have to have singles, which I call separators or standouts, and you have to have covers, where I cover the race. If a horse wins that race and if it's a 9-horse race and I go 4 deep or 5 deep and I didn't have the winner, it's not going to bother me. I couldn't have it. I didn't think he could win. It doesn't bother me. So, it's the same thing there. So, if somebody you respect likes a horse, give it a second look and maybe use it in a race if Matthew likes the 6 horse and I look at that race and I singled it, screw Matthew. I'm not going with it. I'm going with my horse. He's not going to change me. And I'm not going to go too deep. I never go too deep, by the way.
Yeah, I don't have too many hard rules with this stuff. I just, I value logic and discipline. And if, like, even with La Jolla Shores, that horse, I remember you probably don't remember, but it was a turf race, and I think it was a Hoffman's horse, and the horse had just had so many weird races that were, not representative of the value or the actual race that the horse was going to run. And I remember, you were dead right. And it was like 20-1 and the horse won, and it is complete form reversal. And I liked the way you articulated that. So to me, another piece of the communication of the game is you got to be able to go against the grain. You got to bet to win. You got to be not listening to inside information, not listening to trainers and owners and jockeys and all that. But you got to understand the reasons why somebody like that. Like when I talk to somebody about a horse, I don't really do this. I'm very independent, kind of lonely in a lot of ways, because that's what the life of a horse player is you gotta be on your own. You got to figure out your own stuff. But I want to know, what is the logic for a person putting, their name on a horse, or what is the logic to justify betting a horse at those odds? And I think that's where it would be really nice if some of that was streamlined too, because there's levels, there's tiers, right? First favorites, second favorites, third favorites, long shots, whatever. But there's these ideas, like you said, when you see Dancing Gandy and his figures are really low, but he's going up against this hard class, and he's dropping down, like that's like, hidden. And, that kind of logic is very interesting. And I think that's where this game is also in need of more support with the words. But anyway, that's what we needed. We needed a dose of some marketing genius. And I'm hopeful that you'll make it back to California. I know you hate California now, and that you're happy in Texas. And I know California's kind of crazy and wacky and in so many ways with taxes and everything else. But let me just let you, if there's anything else you want to add to closing it, go ahead. But just tell us, like, the cheerleader thing, because everybody needs to know, like, that there are bets in horse racing. Horses like Maximum Security can get disqualified for political reasons probably, and then spooking horse on the turn and jockeys falling off. But tell everyone real quick about the interference, because you bet a lot of football and you were a hell of a football player too. I know better.
I bet sports for a while, and because like everybody else, I thought I always knew who's going to win the games, and of course I don't, because there's this thing called the point spread, which really smart people figure out, and over-unders. But you remember the really bad beats in horse racing too. Mm-hmm. But in sports, I had a couple of really weird ones. You mentioned the weirdest, and but before I'll do that, I bet against I think it was against the Knicks one time, and the Knicks were favored to win by 7 or something, and they were ahead by 9, and they were going off the court, and time was running out, and forget it. And Earl Monroe, a Knick, had the ball. He turned and shot at the opposite basket from mid-court and hit it, and they gave the points to the other team, and I lost the bet. Now that's really goofy. Cheerleader interference. Again, it was a situation where I was ahead in the game. The other team was desperate to score. They threw a Hail Mary pass way down, like 60 yards down the field, with 28 seconds left in the game. And cheerleader on the other side got inbounds, and the receiver of the team that was on offense ran into the cheerleader. And it was called cheerleader interference, serious. And he put the ball on the 8-yard line with something like 18 seconds to go. And on the next play, they got to a touchdown pass. And I lost a really large bet. And so there's a lot of ways to lose. And I've found them over the years, believe me.
Yeah, well, that's what makes it. If it makes you stronger, though, right? That which cannot kill you can, and hopefully you're still able to find some of your long shots and everything. But that was great. I'm glad that you're probably not going to be going too big on the Derby either. It's crazy.
It looks like a long shot year, by the way, to me. Just generally speaking, it kind of looks like a long shot year. And maybe that Chad Brown horse has only been out a couple of times. Watch out. I mean, I think he's 15 to 1. I think he drew the 15 hole. So we'll see. Yeah.
I'm gonna do a little piece around the Derby, just about favorites versus long shots. But I'm with you. You can't take these horses at those prices, man. It's just too much. And we know. I'm not saying I'm gonna win every time, but long run, like those horses they're not for me. So, all right, brother. Well, really good to see your face after all these years, and we'll do it. Maybe I'll come out to Texas sometime, or if you want to come to the Derby next week, I've got a spot. So, just let me know.
Tell Matthew hello. If you see him, he'll be there.
Oh, well, yeah. You tell Matthew hello and tell Joan I said hi, and
okay.
And we'll keep it going again. Thanks for the ideas, mate. That was great.
Thanks a lot.
All right, brother. Have a good time. Have a good